All right, well, let's get started and hope that other folks are able to join in. And obviously, everything that we're talking about today is not a one-time conversation. So there'll be other opportunities for people who may have struggled with the change, the last minute update to the meeting invitation will be able to get in and hope that they can join the discussion. But I'm looking, so we've got about 38 participants now, so that's great. And we'll carry on and keep these discussions going. We really thought it was important to get folks together today and to just have an opportunity to do some open sharing and learning. With the current community distress, the protests, we really wanted to set aside this special time to hear from centers, specifically around what impact you're seeing from callers, what impact you're seeing with staff, and we really want to hear back from centers about what you need from us to support you. I think it's also really important as we start this conversation to just acknowledge that crisis centers aren't always racially diverse, especially in our leadership. We often have a preponderance of white leadership in our crisis centers, in the suicide prevention field, the mental health field in general. Oftentimes we're also, we need to recognize that some of our overall approaches are based largely on the white experience and don't always take into account the needs, the different needs of communities of color. So we just want to be really aware of the fact that who's in the room, who's talking about these issues. We're all doing our best to learn and be better, but we want to recognize upfront that that's something that's prevalent in our particular field. We want to talk about a few different kinds of things today as part of our agenda. Really, we want to hear from you guys, so we're going to make as much space for that as possible. But we want to talk specifically about some updates as part of our agenda. Just what are we doing? What are some of the things that are coming next from the Lifeline? And then we're going to open for some discussion. And we want to hear about what you're experiencing at your centers. So we want to talk about some strategies that we might be able to use, what you're already using, things that you found helpful, and kind of walk into the future of how we can not only react to what's happening in the country right now, but how we can proactively continue these conversations and improve our space. So to start, I did want to just have acknowledge that John had sent an email early in the week, and I see he's on the line, and I'd really love to open with any words from John and Sherry to kind of frame our discussion that's going to come next.
Thanks so much, Shai, and thank you all for joining us today. And thank you all for being a part of a network that is helping everybody struggle with these very difficult times while we're also struggling. I know many of our staff members, our team throughout the network's teams, these are all not just professional issues, but personal issues. Certainly as a white man of privilege, and I would say unearned privilege, this week, these past 2 weeks have really been an important reminder of the things I have taken for granted. My blind spots, again, I don't even know what I don't know. And this is a time for me and all of us in many ways to take stock and think about not only what we can learn and listen, but how we can act in ways that are better. One of the things that's great about these opportunities is it's not just about, a moral thing. It most certainly is that too. We're all interested in doing the right thing, but I think the fact is the more inclusive we all are, and I think many of us on this call would wholeheartedly agree, the more inclusive we are, the better we are. We're just going to be better at what we do because the people we're helping need us to be empathic and understanding and willing to learn from their experience, and that's where we come from. And that's what I think everybody on this call today is here for, is how can we develop a greater shared understanding and do better. And we're going to continue to try to do that. Starting this conversation today, we'll continue it in various ways. I know we'll talk about a few of the upcoming panels. There's some resources we'll talk about. I really want to hear from you all too in terms of what's going on with you. Sherry, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, John, I don't want to take too much of our time here. I know there's a lot that we want to talk about, but I just, reiterate what you said, but also just want to thank everybody for all the work that you all are doing. This year has been incredible in so many ways, and I know that we're all committed to doing the best that we can to take care of the people of this country that are calling our hotlines, and also the people in our centers that are trying to support them. So thank you all for all that you continuously do for the Lifeline and for our country.
Thanks, Sherry. One of the things that we wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about the resource that John mentioned in his email. We have gathered a bunch of resources and reading material and organized it and made it available on the Network Resource Center for everyone. Emily has done a lot of work on organizing that material, so that has been gathered by our communications and STP team and tried to make it as useful as possible for y'all. And I wanted her to maybe talk us through just some of what we've collected and what's there and how you might use it.
Sure, thanks, Shai. So our team has compiled a list of resources for crisis centers on the NRC. And right now it's currently under announcements. So when you go into the main page of the NRC, it is under announcements, but we are hoping to move it soon to its own separate section so we can expand some there. So we have listed websites, books, and articles on a few different topics. First, on how to better understand the current situation through learning about the United States history of oppression and racism, the impact racism has on mental health, and how to continue learning through reading lists and other forms of media. We also have links to resources that can help inform how your center is supporting callers and chatters, as well as how to support and engage your staff. And in addition to the NRC page, STP is also working on creating a more in-depth tip sheet for y'all. This is going to include information about impacts on crisis counselors and callers and chatters, so what you may be hearing on the Lifeline and what your crisis counselors may be experiencing themselves, different coping strategies, and then also how to support crisis counselors through immediate measures, but also how to take some structural long-term changes as well. So as we were saying earlier, we really hope to hear from you today about what you're seeing and experiencing, so we can make sure that we include this on our tip sheet too.
Sure. Can we have somebody who is quicker on technology than me maybe pop up a screen share of that page so folks can see what it looks like and know what they're looking for when they see it? Does anybody already have it open? Emily or Robin? I'm looking at you probably. Robin, thank you. Just want to have you have an opportunity to take a look at that. Thank you. So this is the page currently on announcements. It'll be mirrored if we move it to its own section. But right now you should be able to see it front and center on the homepage of the Network Resource Center, and then click to open up these resources. So here's where it is. And there you go. So take a look through these. We're really hoping that you, as leaders, and I know that most of the folks who join us for these calls are leaders in the Crisis Center, we're really hoping that you as leaders take a look at this page. But once again, we would love very much also if Crisis Center staff were encouraged to get on the Network Resource Center and use and read the articles or look at the links so as they see fit, so for their own learning. If you want to pick and sort of send the whole page out or send items out to your staff, feel free, but it'd be great if you wanted to give them access to the Network Resource Center, encourage them to take a look at that and see some of these great resources that our team has pulled together, so that I know for me, so the stuff that I've been reading as we've sourced this has been really impactful and helped me to sort of process myself. And so I think it'd be great if we can get this out to as many folks as possible to learn. Okay. So yeah, Robin, thank you for doing that. Now we're back to discussion. Next, I just wanted to have somebody from our comms team, Francis or Hannah. We have a lot of things planned that you may find helpful coming up, and we want to tell you a little bit about what the future might bring in terms of our Lifeline plans.
Thank you, Shai. I'll be really quick because I do want to make sure we leave 40 minutes for discussion. And I just want to note up front that all these events that I'm about to talk through and all these initiatives, whatever is mentioned today about what you're needing from us, we will definitely take into consideration when shaping these events over the coming weeks and months. So we do hope to have next week potentially a research-focused presentation examining racism, violence, and mental health. And following that, we want to have another conversation on the same topic, but through a crisis center lens itself, about how you can really take what we've learned in that first presentation and apply it to the crisis centers. There are wellness initiatives for the entire network coming up, and we will have more information on that soon as well. One thing I do want to pull out really prominently the STP are working on is looking at the imminent risk policy and creating resources, that clarify the imminent risk policy, especially during this time. And we have an online peer support program as well, which, Christian, I don't know if you have a couple minutes just to describe a few words about that. It's okay if not. I'm putting you on a spot a little bit here. But yeah, just reiterating that everything I've mentioned, these events coming up, are the short-term events that we will use to shape longer-term work around this as well. And everything you say today will really help inform how we go forward in what we're able to provide to the centres.
Do you want me to pop in, Hannah?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And apologies if you hear background hammer. One of my neighbors is doing some construction, but maybe that's an apt background, like a hammer and a nail. Well, as Hannah mentioned, one of the things we have planned moving forward is that under the Disaster Distress Helpline, which is similar to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've always considered incidents of community violence, civil unrest as a part of our scope of services. Over the years, we've outreached and networked with providers across the country, including crisis centers in our network like Baltimore Crisis Response, Provident, other centers who have experienced incidents of racist violence, which is obviously everywhere across the country, but in recent years, some of the more high profile incidents being in those cities. And so in relation to that, and just thinking about moving forward, one of the things that we have planned is actually launching a new initiative called the Online Peer Support Communities for the Disaster Distress Helpline. These are going to our goal is to have these communities be for anyone impacted by natural or human-caused disasters, but very specific communities of people who want to connect with peers. So survivors of hurricanes connecting with other survivors of hurricanes, survivors of mass shootings connecting with people who've experienced mass shootings. The first communities that we're going to be launching, hopefully in August, will be related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the very first of those is actually going to be geared towards crisis counselors. And John and others were instrumental in verbalizing the need for this, in that before we even start to talk about supporting other communities impacted by disaster, let's look at how we can support our own network. There are approximately 7,000 counselors across all of our crisis centers in the network. And so our goal is to provide a forum where counselors can engage 24/7 with starting conversations, sharing resources, and getting support from each other, whether it's related to incidents of community violence and community unrest, or the COVID-19 pandemic, or other disasters that might be occurring in our communities. And so this will be a pilot. We're going to be using Facebook as the platform in the pilot phase for its 24/7 availability and widely used as a widely used platform. We may be looking at other platforms to host these online peer support communities moving forward. Another key feature will be that people can have access to crisis support themselves through these communities. That'll be something we'll be looking at for the crisis counselor peer support community, because it'll be a different dynamic for crisis counselors to get support from other crisis counselors in a dedicated forum, but that is a part of the model. So we're really excited about the launch of this initiative and in looking at providing support for crisis counselors in this way.
I had just a sentence or two to that, Christian. Thank you for that really thorough description. Hannah mentioned that we are also that what you've just described is part of a bigger strategy of wellness for the crisis centers that the Lifeline is hoping to implement over the next few months and years. And I just wanted to say that to help us to do that, we're looking at having some people on our team who are specifically devoted to that work. Some of you may be familiar with Dr. April Natural. She's been involved in the crisis center world in different ways over the years, and specifically involved in disaster mental health and wellness, and has a lot of previous work that she's done in this area. She's joined our team. She starts with us on Monday, and one of her charges is going to be to help to develop an initiative for wellness for crisis centers. The peer support that Christian just mentioned will be part of it, but we'll also be looking at other things that we can do to try to help encourage wellness across the network. And we'll certainly be in touch with you all as we start to envision what those initiatives look like and get your ideas. She'll also be having a staff person who will be helping her with that. And as a matter of fact, that position has not even been advertised yet, but soon we'll be posting for a program manager position for wellness and crisis services. And so just wanted to let you know that this is really an area of focus. Incidentally, we had this plan before COVID, before unrest, before all of these things that have made 2020 an even tougher year to be a crisis counselor. We were looking at this, and so it's something that we're really committed to and we'll be working on moving forward. So I just wanted to let you all know about that.
Thanks, Sherry, and thank you, Christian. So that paints a little bit of a picture of some of the things that we're thinking about, some of the things that we're developing, but that we don't want to develop anything without feedback from our centers. It's really important. So we want to open some discussion items, and I would love it if folks use the chat. That's kind of a safe space for folks to just type things out and not worry about that. But we'd also love if anybody wanted to come on camera or turn their mic on and help us to first just kind of get a sense of what you're seeing already. So we're interested in hearing right now just what kinds of calls are you having related to these issues. So what are you hearing from callers? How is it presenting? What's the volume? Anything that you want to share, particularly just about what's already happening in your centers, help us kind of take a pulse about what's going on. So I'm going to leave the floor open. So the chat's open. Go on mic. We're interested in hearing more about what you're experiencing. Anybody? Okay. I'm guessing that the reluctance to share or maybe not having data, so might be something that happens. Okay, Daniel, so a lot of anger. So we're hearing that, and I know that that's something that I'm seeing reflected on social media. So not just from my friend group, but I follow a lot of crisis center folks on different social media platforms, and I'm definitely seeing both feelings from those leaders, but also responses that relate to what's happening in our crisis centers. Is anybody sort of tracking in some way calls related to it and call types, kinds of issues that folks are bringing up?
I'll jump in here. This is Gene. We've asked them to put it in the media box if the call is involving anything to do with the civil unrest or the riots and so forth. And I don't know what the results are. We got to start pulling it out today. Rochelle's asked us to take a look at how many calls in the last couple of weeks. So we are asking to put it in the media box.
Yeah. And I know that, I know at least centers that use iCarol, which are a good portion of centers, at least one of them has gone back and done like a word search on words related, and come up with quite a number of calls that are relating to this. Callers were talking about it, at least at that center. If you have that product or you're using another product that does a keyword search, it'd be interesting to go back and take a look at your notes, your call notes, if you aren't formally tracking it, or even if you are, to take a look at the keywords or the key themes. We want to collect information from you during this call, but we also very much want to hear from you after, if you're doing a deeper look at some of the calls that you're having and want to share with us. We want to hear about it. I'm looking in the chat and there's a couple of answers, a couple of responses, so I want to get to those and read them. We're getting a lot about fear, people who haven't experienced any mental health issues before, but they're experiencing anxiety and they're unsure how to cope with that anxiety. Also, someone saying callers are wanting to engage your counselors in political discourse and becoming aggressive or making racist comments. So that's one of the things that we have been thinking about here that we might need to respond to. So unfortunately, that you've confirmed that that might be something that we want to give some attention to in our guidance for crisis counselors. Oh, hi, Brenda. And Brenda says at our center in Mississippi, we have a number of African-American volunteers and staff, and we've had some abusive calls towards our staff and volunteers that are racist and aggressive towards them. Yeah, and that had been my experience as a center director as well, long prior to this, is that sometimes our staff would get singled out for those kinds of comments, and it can be really stressful to handle those calls and address those issues and make sure we're creating a safe space for our staff members. Are there other things that you're seeing or hearing from callers that you want us to know about, or that you're just noticing as themes?
What we saw, or what when speaking to my counselors last night in a debrief, they were mentioning that they had several calls from police officers and law enforcement themselves, being distressed and feeling targeted, that they're being grouped in with just the ones that are, obviously not conducting themselves in a professional manner, and that they're having they're feeling targeted themselves. People who know that they are officers in the community and they're worried about their family. That was one. Secondly, from the team members that were saying, they mentioned that some callers were worried about or weren't able to get help from emergency services due to, in those areas, that police and emergency services was being dispatched out to handle the protests and riots. So there was a little bit of frustration in getting their own needs met or actually going out to get any type of services that are open.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, that is another complication that we need to think through, that can be happening in these areas of unrest, so not being able to get emergency services when needed. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that, David. Other things that you guys are seeing? I see your question, Rochelle, so we want to circle back to that in a minute. Just want to continue to kind of get a little bit of that oversight, though, on what you're seeing on your calls. Is there any other issues that you noticed coming up or themes that your staff have shared with you? If you're thinking of things or you're looking at call notes or something on the side and you have something else to share, please do put it in the chat window. And there's no, we can circle back to that, and we definitely do want to hear about it.
Hey, Shari, I don't know if you saw in the chat that Rochelle was asking Brenda if she could elaborate more on how.
Yeah, I did. I
Sorry.
did. Yeah. So,
I didn't hear you.
um,
Sorry.
yeah. So, yeah, if anyone wants to respond specifically to that question, we are going to circle back to that. So it's one of the areas that we're going to talk about supporting staff and how staff might deal with that. But if you have things that you want to put in the chat box now, please do. Let me also look and see what Kathy has put down just now. Help Network in Youngstown, Ohio, with a very diverse crisis staff, having always received abusive and racist callers throughout the years, saying staff has been supportive and empathetic in establishing good contact. No specific calls related to the recent turmoil, still more concerns with COVID. Can you please show Cora? Yes. So we'll put a link into the Network Resource Center. So Emily's on the job, so it's right there. So you can click into that link. Again, I'll do my usual pitch if you have any issues connecting to the Network Resource Center. So please reach out to lifelineinfo@vibrant.org and we will help you get on there so that you're not missing these valuable resources. You do have to have that special login, but it's pretty easy to set up and we'll happily help you if you're having any trouble. So I want to talk still just a little bit more about callers and how, building off of what Kathy was saying about being supportive and empathic and establishing good contact with those callers who might be saying racist things to your staff, but also just in general, so that for whatever callers are facing and bringing to our attention and wanting to talk about and process on our crisis lines related to racism, related to the protests. How do you have ideas or things that you've been pushing out to staff or things that you think work to create a safe space for our callers to be able to talk about this in a safe way and in the context of crisis intervention? Have there been things that you're doing or specifically sharing with your team members to help create those safe spaces for callers? I'm just interested in knowing kind of what, in addition to the resources we're sharing, are there other resources or guides or things you're doing to help your crisis counselors deliver better service around this issue in a supportive way? Any ideas? Focusing on the feelings behind it rather than discussing the specifics. Yeah. Yeah. Any other tips or suggestions or things that are working at your center that you want us to know about? Or that maybe your crisis counselors have found supportive, validating feelings and experiences? Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I think that's probably very true right now, is that validation is something that we need to spend a lot of time on. So with folks, and that will help as we're processing these really negative reactions and emotional reactions that people are having. This, much like our COVID situation, is impacting our crisis counselors as well as the people that we're serving. And so it makes it really difficult because we all have our own views and feelings, and we're all processing feelings as a crisis center community in various ways, as well as trying to support our community. So and coming on top of everything we've been dealing with the pandemic, I imagine, is creating a really stressful situation for our callers and for our crisis counselors. Jamie also added that several of our hotline specialists have felt comfortable in strategically using self-disclosure to disclose around similar experiences. Is there anything more that you can say about how you're framing that, Jamie? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we have a really rich diversity of workers, and some of our workers have felt comfortable saying, well, yeah, like as a Black person myself, like I've been having my own reaction to this, and using that strategically and pragmatically as a means of furthering a connection with a caller, not trying to take over the conversation, but just saying, yeah, I get this because I've experienced some of what you're describing to me here.
1 second, Jamie. Meryl, can you mute?
283.
Meryl?
3
No?
9 5 9
I hope that's not her
5
credit card number.
9 5
Meryl, can you mute?
6
Hi,
9
you're the host.
7.
Y'all should be able to mute her yourselves.
I
Yeah.
can't. I don't have the power. Does anybody else here have the power? Tom, are you the official host?
Yes, working on it. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Jamie. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to not follow through on your point. I just wanted to make sure I was hearing everything that you were saying and also not accidentally getting information we shouldn't be having. Okay. Does anyone want to follow up on Jamie's thought before I move over to the chat? And I didn't want to not give space for anybody to follow up. Thank you. George mentions that not specifically related to the recent events, but in the past. So they've had issues with callers using slurs or expressing opinions that are troubling or hurtful to the responders. And you're telling your responders that if the way a person's talking is making harder for them to be a support, they could respectfully establish boundaries. And some specific phrasing. It's harder for me to focus on your needs when you use that kind of language. If you can't do that, then maybe I'm not the best person for you to use for support. Okay, yeah. I'm also interested too, so as we're talking about callers, interested in how you are doing as leaders and what you're hearing from your staff. How are staff doing in general? So are there concerns or things that you're addressing to try to help them feel safe and supported? Are there things that you as leaders are thinking about or feeling like you could use support with? Just sort of interested in opening the floor to how what you might need, so what your center staff might need. So we want to focus always on the needs of callers, and part of that is focusing on what we need to feel safe and successful to do our job. What is it that you're seeing in yourselves or in your teams? So what are you hearing? Meryl says that she feels like it's difficult as a leader to speak truth to power and still be respectful and create a safe space. Yeah, I agree. And that's some of the things that I've seen some of our other crisis center leaders talking about in other public spaces, you know, and social media and things like that, is how to do that and how to balance that. Does anyone want to speak to how they're doing that as a leader? So with this conversation, things that you're thinking about or trying? Meryl, I've been honest and it's been okay. Yeah. So just sort of sharing that vulnerability of where you're at with your thoughts and what you're struggling with, and being honest about that with your team members.
I think this is.
So we have, excuse me.
No, go ahead, Daniel. Who's next?
We have a variety. We have, you know, we have a lot of counselors that actually, you know, kind of opened up to me on Monday about how, you know, they're scared for their brother or their boyfriend or their husband, and all I can do is just, you know, validate their feelings, like handling almost like a caller. It hadn't been easy, but I mean, it's been a difficult couple of days. I'm sure you all could relate. But.
No, thank you for sharing that. There was also someone else who was trying to speak right around the same time. Now's your chance.
Yeah, this is Rochelle Pellissier.
There you are.
Just, you know, most of it is not just us as leaders, but our entire staff, and quite frankly, everyone across the nation and the world is just exhausted from going through this crazy pandemic and, you know, doing crisis intervention for us on both a statewide level and a national level. And we're just exhausted. And I think that's part of the issue with everyone else, and why this came to such a huge head is everyone is just exhausted and anxious. And I think part of this, a lot of this, good things are going to come out of it. But as we talked about, as Daniel said, very much with the leads I've talked about, use those same skills, listening skills with our staff, listening for cues from our staff and volunteers that we use with people on the phones or on text. That sometimes we forget our skills and our training that we use with callers and texters when we're dealing with our own staff and volunteers. So really, remembering those skills and using that empathy and those listening skills when our staff, because we've all had occurrences with staff or volunteers kind of acting out, losing their usual calm demeanor that they would have, not on the phone, but when they get off the phone or when they get off the text. And, remembering that they are humans too, and to use the same exact skills that we use with a caller or a texter is a lot of what I like to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that the skills that we have as crisis counselors are things that we should and could use in our own lives. So, and with our staffs, with ourselves, because they're great skills and techniques. That's what works. And yet sometimes we don't always turn those things inward to our teams and to ourselves. I see a couple things here that I want to follow up on from the chat. So Teresa had mentioned that sometimes being concerned you might say the wrong thing, even with good intent, and that caution sometimes makes it hard to sound sincere. And I so appreciate you saying that. That's something that I think a lot of us are concerned about. So, and figuring out how to use our language and talk about things as directly as possible, so without causing any further harm. That's important for us to be learning, and we're hoping that some of the resources that we've shared on that page on the NRC, so it might help and have definitely helped me to feel more informed, and we're hoping to put together some more suggestions around that. But I like also following back to what other folks were saying about being honest and using honesty and sort of talking about that and your concerns openly can be really helpful. So I'm glad that you shared that. Kelly has mentioned some things that have been helpful with her team, being flexible with staff and their needs, giving time off for self-care, ending shifts early when protest activity is nearby. I was chit-chatting with her the other day and talking just about, like, sometimes the volume has been too much from things that are happening right outside crisis counselors' windows while they're trying to do crisis shifts. So, and the protest is outside. So that can create a lot of sensory overload and be really difficult. Being available to talk to your crisis counselor team. And I heard someone else already talk today about you are hosting a debriefing session with a shift, and that made me really happy to hear that folks are doing that. Reaching out and proactively checking in with staff too. Let's see what Meryl has to say. Understanding anger, validating it, protecting ourselves. Sometimes reflecting feelings escalates anger, so we need to be flexible in our approaches. Do you have any suggestions, Meryl, since that's your point, around what to do or what you direct folks to do when you feel like reflecting feelings is escalating anger? Is there a different approach that you recommend folks take?
Yes. Can you hear me, Shai?
I sure can.
All right, I'm on the road. Sorry. This is so wonderful to see so many colleagues here. Yes, I worry sometimes. Sorry, I'm hearing my own echo, which is terrible. I worry sometimes for those of us who operate in the mental health space that we focus a lot on what an individual can do to cope, which is great. I'm all about.
Okay, Meryl, we lost your audio.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Oh man.
Let's give it one more shot, and then maybe we'll keep it to the chat.
I'm going to give it one more shot. So in addition, I like to take an ecological perspective. So not only is it important for us to work with people on how they can build their own coping skills and getting them through the moment and all of the good work that we do around that, but taking an ecological view, you know, if they are struggling with real barriers in terms of discrimination and oppression and social injustice, giving voice to that, you know, validating it. That's got to be as much a part of our work as just helping the person get through as an individual their particular crisis. So that's kind of what I would offer there.
No, thank you for that clarification, Marilyn. We were able to hear at that time. And I really do like what you were just saying. And I really responded to the last line in your typed message about validating and giving voice to environmental stressors rather than focusing solely on a coping skill or a safety plan. Those things are important, but if we're not acknowledging the first part, so we lose that important connection that's so important to helping with the second part. So really giving space for that is important, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Mary has written, our organization is primarily composed of white leadership. So we're explicitly stating our support to the Black community and our staff in general with the goal of providing them an unquestionable safe space. We're providing additional debriefing after calls, adding small breaks after calls, and being realistic with the fear and anger that they're feeling. Providing them with explicit permissions to say things to callers, like what George stated earlier. And our support managers making sure to check in with every employee right now. We're cautious to try to predict what our staff will need, so we're being open and honest with that, and asking them to reach out if they need additional support, and asking what would be most helpful for each person. So planning for that individual response as well as those group statements, that's all marvelous. So it sounds like you're really taking a very thoughtful approach, Mary, to how you're supporting your team members. And I think I see a bunch of heads down writing things down.
Just in response to that, I think that that's a really important to make about the organization coming forward and explicitly stating support. I sort of would just like to add to that the need to both offer support in the moment, but to provide that space to say, and on top of this, we're also going to really internally look at why is this the case? Like, is it the case that our leadership is mostly made up of white people, and not just, oh, let's acknowledge and support our various communities, but let's look internally and see what is it that we are also doing that we can facilitate change. And I think that's an important message that I think just wanted to put out there.
I very much agree, Jillian. Thank you. Following up in the chat too, there's more discussion so that I want to put out there. So just David mentioning a debriefing group with the team for them to process their emotions and feelings, using prompts and changing the focus on what they can do instead of what they cannot do. After processing guidance on how to be intentional about being calming and forward thinking influence to the team and themselves. Yes, that's really important. And some of the things that we had on our list that we're thinking about including, and wanted to get feedback from y'all today a little bit about things that we can do, and those included check-in meetings, debriefings, different kinds of exercises and discussions that we might use, maybe incorporating some discussions about implicit bias, or there's even some tests available. That tests sounds like it sounds kind of negative to say we're testing you for it. So, but to be able to help folks reveal and discuss and sort of talk about implicit bias in group discussions, listening sessions, and being clear about whether you're doing a listening session versus a discussion about action. Those are some things that we had talked about, surveying staff, and some of the things that Mary was talking about, right? So with asking them what they need and individual needs. Maybe there's facilitators or courses. There's a bunch of things that we're sort of mulling over, including as possible recommendations. And we're wondering if there's things that you have used or that you facilitators or kinds of facilitation or kinds of ways to debrief in meeting. I know we'll be taking notes from David's suggestion and Mary's suggestion. If you all have other things that you are planning to do or have done in the past or are thinking about engaging in the short term, please let us know, because we're definitely thinking about all those things and wanting to create some guidance and share from the wisdom of our centers with the entire network. Following up, Meryl mentioned IAS tests through Harvard, implicit association tests, and she's used them. Okay, great. And Meryl, I'll follow up with you sort of a little bit about how you've used them. And if anyone else has used tests like that, I'd love to hear from you so that we can frame some of the information that we're sharing. I'm mindful of the time, and I know we got started a little bit late. Sherry, I feel like you want to say something.
I did. Thank you for catching that, Shai. Just really quickly while there's a break in the chat, and I know we're wrapping up. Hannah mentioned something earlier that's really important, and I just wanted to reiterate it a little bit because we didn't really get into it in this call. But you know, the Lifeline has worked really hard on providing some guidance in terms of how to work with callers who might be at imminent risk, and I know that you are all probably really familiar with our stance on that, in the sense that we've always encouraged you know, working collaboratively with callers to try to develop ways that they might be able to stay safe. And if in the circumstance that that's not possible for some reason, trying to use the least intrusive intervention to try to get them some assistance. And, you know, I know that Shai on these calls has been talking about how important that least intrusive intervention and collaboration is, and already how it was kind of highlighted with COVID, you know, that people are afraid of going into the emergency rooms and other places where they may be exposed to the virus. And now I think with what's happening with the community unrest, there's always been also a fear oftentimes for people to have a law enforcement and police in their homes if they were, you know, struggling with thoughts of suicide. One might even ask why is that the only intervention that we have to rely on oftentimes. But I think that you know, minorities and other folks who may be affected by what's going on right now with the civil unrest and fears of law enforcement and other people may be even more sensitive to those concerns than before. And so I just kind of want to make a reminder that, you know, as you're working with your teams, to help to reiterate, you know, what least intrusive intervention means. I know that Shai and the STP team plan to really take our policies and give some more concrete examples of other ways that, in specific ways that we might work with callers to stay safe. I know just really quickly, one way sometimes of doing that is if your organization is doing follow-up, but, you know, some just really short-term follow-up. So, you know, we recognize that, you know, you might not be feeling safe right now. You think you'll be safe for the next hour, the next 24 hours? You know, what is a period of time that they feel like they might be okay, that then we can connect with them again? You know, that sometimes is a buffer instead of other types of interventions. And Shai and her team are going to be, you know, working to develop that more. But I just wanted to put that out there because it's, I think, so important right now in the times that we're living in.
Thank you, Sherry. And yeah, we're very conscious of that. We, you know, our policy it isn't, as we review all of our policies from time to time, and as we're looking specifically at this policy, so in light of current events, so it's not the policy, I think, that needs changing. Our policy supports good action, but we need more clarity. And so we're going to try to give more clarity to these policies. So like Sherry said, concrete examples. One of the things we've been talking about a lot is the discomfort it leaves for crisis counselors when things maybe end uncertainly with a caller, you don't necessarily have the greatest safety plan, but you don't have that concrete imminent risk. And many times centers, crisis counselors or their supervisors or part of the management have as a policy of erring on the side of caution and calling 911 and sending law enforcement to the scene. And we think that maybe there's some more clarity that we need to get at, and we'll be teasing this out and would love to hear back from folks. I've already heard a little bit from a couple of centers that we've talked to who've adjusted their policies or added more clarity to their internal policies, and we're going to be trying to do that in thinking about sort of flipping your thinking about where the side of caution should lie, and not necessarily if we don't have those criteria that meet imminent risk, how do we sit with our own discomfort with not knowing for 100% sure that someone is safe. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about those examples and trying to give some more guidance to folks. We'll be working that through. I'm working with communications. We'll probably be doing a blog post. We'll probably be doing a clarified tip sheet. We'll probably be doing a little webinar. So there's going to be lots of opportunities to discuss this, and I'm soliciting. Again, I've got a couple of examples, but I would love if anybody feels like they have strong training or strong policies around imminent risk that kind of get into some more of these details. We'd love to hear from you and sort of discuss and learn from what's making you better. I know like Harris Center had just posted that they had realigned how they train around their imminent risk procedures, and they said they had a 60% reduction in active rescues. So I'm following up with them, and they've shared some of their materials with me. And I'd love to hear from other folks who've thought about this, because we really want to be mindful of this and safety first for everyone. So
I wanted to just echo what you and Sherry were just talking about, and kind of reinforce. I know a number of our centers have signed or have agreed to report imminent risk data, which I think is just so useful for us, especially around determining voluntary and involuntary rescues. So us being increasingly aware of, not only your internal tracking kind of helps you be aware of that, and whether you were doing that before or not, but certainly helps us work with some of you and to share information that we get from centers who are doing a really innovative, interesting, and effective job of reducing involuntary rescues. So we'll look forward to sharing more information as we get it. But most importantly, it helps us if you send us the information. So the degree to which you're recording voluntary versus involuntary rescues, just note that that's going to really help us help everyone. So again, wanted to thank you all for your help with that.
And thanks to Meryl, what she's posting is exactly what we're talking about. So we'd love to see your information, collaboration on safety planning, and sort of looking at the research on outcomes that relate to coercive actions, really better informing our practice and clarifying our policies and making sure that we're pushing that out to folks. It's 3 o'clock on the dot, so I want to sum up and hope some folks can stay maybe a minute or two after for us to just sort of sum up. We have all those things coming up and coming out that we've talked about from our roundtable discussions and education sessions to continuing to develop more materials. We want to hear back from you. So if there are thoughts that you weren't able to share today, either in the chat or that you want to share with us privately, or you want to have a talk, please do reach out. I've put my email in the chat window. Most of our emails are pretty easy to guess based on the first initial last name at vibrant.org. But if you're not sure who you want to reach out to, by all means hit Lifeline info at vibrant.org, and the team that reviews those emails will make sure it gets out to the right folks to respond to. We have lots of other ideas and things that we want to discuss in this roundtable about creating cultural competence and developing skills with staff. We're going to continue to work through those with lots of other with these sessions. So with these webinars and other kinds of things, as well as resource materials. So we're going to keep working forward through those things. We want to hear what you want. So again, if you have things that you know right away that you want to see us address or thinking about, pop those in the chat. One of the things that we are going to address is, in addition to what was shared here, some of those issues on how to help counselors respond to racism from callers. We'll definitely make sure to include that in our materials. But if there's other things that you're thinking about immediately that you want us to include, pop them in the chat window here, or again, follow up with us afterwards. And be on the lookout. Make sure that you're opening our emails, or that you have our MailChimp announcements, something that's set for you to be able to receive, so that you don't miss any of these great offerings that our communications team is putting together, and will help you to help your team and respond and help us to build better resources and better crisis counseling communities, so that things are safe for folks. Any last thoughts from our leadership before we go? Okay, this is just the beginning of our discussions around this. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your Friday to be here with us today. Thanks for bearing with the rough start, and we wish you all a wonderful weekend, and please give our love to your crisis counseling teams. We really so appreciate everything that they're doing, and the stress that we've all been feeling and that you've been feeling. So we just want to honor that, and look forward to talking to you more about this as time goes on. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.